Hi, everyone. We're going to get started. It looks like everyone basically found a seat. Wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us this evening for part 2 of You Have My Word. My name is Laura Henriksen. I'm the program director here at the Poetry Project, and I'm so excited to be with you tonight to continue our exploration of liminal languages, organized by our extremely brilliant curatorial fellows, Chang Yu Chen and Fan Wu, working together as Mogalu Obo. Before I turn it over to them, I wanted to spend a moment reflecting more deeply together on how it came to pass that we are all gathered in this room tonight. What conditions made this gathering possible and its many possible meanings. I invite us each to consider the multiplicities of circumstances, choices, surprises, mistakes, miracles, friends, teachers, and ancestors, without each of whom it would not be possible for us to be together tonight in this way. If it feels safe to, I invite us all to try and sense how those many presences are here with us, even if we perhaps cannot see them. If it feels right to, I invite us all to use this moment to offer our gratitude and to think about what we might want to do or how we might want to be now that we are here. If history is a kind of language, and if places are kinds of stories, then this room we are in now is, among other things, a ghost story. It's a story that holds the realities and legacies of settler colonization.
You have poetry on your mind, and now we have you here in this experiment. You have my word.
And what You Have My Word is a series of 3 nights of performances, presentations, and workshops on the themes and subjects of liminal languages, of lovers' codes and idiolects, of dialects that swim between normative languages, of semantic sense that melts down into somatic sensuality.
Some of you were here yesterday. Some of you will be here tomorrow. If you are here all 3 days, you will get a degree of Mogulobo University. But I will still repeat some of the information that was relayed in a strange way yesterday, but in a straightforward way today. Shall I start with how we met?
Please, begin.
I have your words. I have your words since the beginning. I had you in my headphone because a Canadian podcast weirdly showed up in my feed. And I tuned in, it was you talking about that you have problem with cooking because you uncontrollably romanticize everything, which creates a difficulty in managing pragmatic procedures. And then I had your voice live when you come to New York and did a performance at Sultan Room. You did the ASMR performance, even though it was such a large club, but I had you so close to me. And afterwards, we had a dinner, and you had me amongst your friend group, and I got to witness how cozy you are with each other, how boundaryless you are with each other. And then I had a breakup. And then I had your sentence. You told me that your selfhood is nothing but the capacity to change. This sentence I carry to this day, and I have been changing constantly ever since.
After that breakup, I asked you to be my wingman in Hong Kong. Or your wingwoman, my wingwoman, sorry. And it was a role that you uneasily refused and accepted in different ways. And it was for this bounding boy with a satanic smile in Hong Kong. And I love inviting you into the fold of all my Toronto collectivity because it feels like you burn a hole through the quilt that we make. This is a beautiful cigarette scar that marks the atmosphere but is also a part of the quilt. And what you speak about as this boundarylessness is part of our drag performance tonight, in which we're two kinds of vegetable and fungi archetypes. Myself representing the mushroom that expands infinitely into the present and collapses past and future through this expansiveness of the infinite present. It's this sporification of all things. It's this folded immanence. And Yu Chen is here to represent
Carrot, because I, unlike you, have a goal. I always feel like chasing something, and I always live for the future. Today is a preparation. Life hasn't begun yet, and I have to work hard to prepare for its arrival.
And that's why I'm in this lowered position, in a kind of,
But even
fungal
though I'm
arrangement.
higher, I am rooted, unlike you.
What lovely tension between co-hosts. And for anyone who hasn't yet sat down, we invite you also to root yourself. Maybe there are a few seats in the midst of this arrangement. Is this one empty or is it being reserved? There's one over here, there's one over there. So if you haven't found your way to a desk, please do find your roots. A lot of the work today will be taking place in this kind of miniature collective arrangement.
Where were we?
Maybe we want to talk about have, the theme of the night tonight.
Oh,
or
maybe we should talk about you first.
let's talk about you.
You is the subjectivity other than the self. You is a mushroom mentality. For us, carrot, we don't care about you. But last night we did explore the you-ness. We started with linguistic Ross Perlin, who co-direct Endangered Language Alliance, who started investigating the linguistic strata underneath this very church, and of East Village, and of Manhattan, and of New York City, and how the matter of linguistic diversity is a matter of human right, how losing linguistic diversity is a matter of poverty.
And then Tamara Santibanyas last night led us through her explorations of oral history and the metaphor of the brick. So we went from this Ross Perlin's very networked idea of language at a very macroscopic and geographic level into the oral history of a few particular people in Tamara's life. So we had this nice dialectical enfolding between language as this networked operation and language as this very personal idiolect that comes from the self.
And last night closed with Nicholas Hawke's poetry, where he gave us instructions of an old and foreign and classic, may I say, poetic tradition, but we made nonsensical poetry out of it, and everyone participated, voiced themselves, inserting their own voice into this faraway ghost body.
And tonight our theme is have. In the sentence, you have my word. And initially when Yu Chen proposed this as the theme of night 2, I was very distressed because I mistrust possession, or the word that marks possession, have. What does it mean to have anything? I don't feel like I have anything at all, my own body, let alone the objects of the world. So how could we approach have with a kind of a breakdown attitude toward this word?
You have a tattoo that says, have not. But actually tattoo was on my mind, not only because Tamara's practice so deeply and widely rooted but spore around the practice of tattoo, but think of the practice of tattoo, at first is a hole. It's a negative space, but then because of that, ink can fill in and it becomes a positive space. It becomes a mark, a trace, a language. I guess I wasn't distressed about possessiveness of have because I believe possessiveness and the loss is always one and the same thing. Just as in 道德经 有之以为利，无之以为用. What is there, what we have, is a mere facilitator. For example, in building a house, the brick and the wood is what we have, but they're there to facilitate the empty space in between, which is a real usage of a house. Having and lost is always together. You're a mushroom, should understand this.
And when you described the way that tattoos work for you, it also made me think about something that happened to kind of efface Taoism, which is Maoism in the 20th century, and how dialectics worked between negativity and positivity to erase the idea of anyone owning anything, except the state itself. Right? The state became this concentrated center of power to allow communism of the people to happen. And we keep coming back to this theme of what the 20th century of China means to the both of us. And yeah, in a very real way, because I think I have that through my parents' trauma of it, or their memories of it, and you have a much more first-hand experience of that time.
That could be where my carolness come from. Because communism hasn't realized yet, but it will. So everything we do today is for tomorrow.
I feel like I can only bow. And in the context of having, we also speak a lot about what it means to have each other's words. I learned so much from Yu Chen. I always ask her, what is this English word translated into Mandarin? How would you say it? What is its etymology? You know, we're constantly demanding things of each other across our kind of bilingualism, our kind of asymmetrical bilingualism. My Mandarin is like a grade 3 level Mandarin, and Yu Chen always calls her English underdeveloped, although this is her language for it.
Yes, we discovered the essay of each other's and realized the two essays are mirror image of each other. You call your Mandarin deteriorating, I'll call my English underdeveloped. You use the word traitor, I use the word treason. And you talk about what kind of past is lost as the memory of the language fades away. I talk about what kind of future is forbidden from me because I don't even have the word for it. In a way, we're both grieving for past and future loss, but it is in this grief that we carve out a personal dialect. And so luckily, our personal dialect match and complement. And we also believe that such maladjustments with language is an ontological condition. It's not only in between the two of us. It's not only among the diasporic bodies that's geographically so, but with everyone, I believe. No two people operate the same word in the same way. No two people mean the same sentence the same way, twice, in different position, even within time. That's why you're here. That's why we invited our dear friends whose language has in the past infiltrated my brain. I have your word. And in this room, we will all resonate. We will all create maybe crazy feedback, but we will see how we can contain it in this room.
Yeah, so thank you all for joining us in this soil of having as a form of having not, and all the grief and the erotic energy that runs in this soil that we're going to hear from our artists kind of really expanding on and expounding upon tonight. And I just really want to thank the staff at Poetry Project and all the event staff one more time, if we can, because they've been incredible and amazing in helping us with this bedrock that we've created.
Shall I go ahead and to introduce our first artist is very difficult for me because I have so much to say. We met by mere chance in Masmoka right before the pandemic of North America. You were there installing a show. I was there doing a residency. You came to my studio, which was the last studio visit. Till now, really. And that conversation with you has reigned my year till this day. And I think that conversation has been carried in both of our practice in the past 2 to 3 years. After I came back from Mass Mocha, I can't stop talking about you to everyone around me. And my dear friend Lily fulfilled my fantasy and put us together again in a conversation for a programming of Q Art Foundation. And our, can I say it? Love? Okay. Was well documented. You can find it on YouTube. And then we were both invited to teach a class together on Montpellier. It was a 5-day class. For the last 2 days, I did not sleep at all. I couldn't rest my brain. I think you broke my brain. You stretched my brain so far that it can't bounce back. I heard your voice in my shower, in my dream, and the things that I wrote in preparation for our class became completely and perfectly synchronized with the thing you were writing. The first day of the theme was coinage, to create your own vocabularies. And I think I have 2 of your words really predominantly. One is opacity, the other is revision. In the past, whenever I think of opacity, I'm thinking of I'm quoting Glissant, and now I think I'm quoting you. Glissant described opacity. Well, he first started with transparency, how it is deeply entangled with colonial mentality, that you have to be translated, you have to be digested by my system of knowledge, so you can be understood, so you can exist. So that the opacity is a survival strategy, is pushing against this desire to devour and understand. You made one book twice, and they look slightly differently. And you make this process of revision, which most artists hold very privately, public. You publish your revision. You refuse to call work complete. And you share your trajectory, which is so generous and fruitful. And I think we're very lucky to have you tonight. I will say that another hidden premises of Mogulobo is that we all have a practice of teaching, even though I guess I take it as a cosplay, really. You can take it as performance. But I think we all think there's so much potentiality in pedagogy that you showed me is a form of hospitality, is a form of making space, is a form of really leaning into each other's ecosystem. And Camila have showed me the strengths of organization and how that actually paved the way for improvisation. And we're so happy to have you. Take it away.
Camila. Thank you so much. That was a glowing introduction. I would love a mic stand. That would be great. And then I'm going to log in, and we're going to say some things and do some things together. Are we up? We're up. Thank you. All right. So as Yuchen already noted, I have a practice of teaching, and I brought my little timer for myself. When I was a high school teacher, I used this quite frequently to keep myself on time, to keep students. I was like, for what, 4 years? Like, it's been a while. So I'm really excited, again, to be here. I'm Camila Janan Rashid. Yeah, we're gonna go ahead and get started. One thing I'll say is that when I speak, I sometimes go into a bit of a trance, which often looks like me just being really excited and talking very fast, but I'll slow down today. I also just want to say thank you to Poetry Project for all of the sort of meta things that are happening now in terms of translation. We have someone who's doing closed captioning in addition to the live stream, and we know that there's going to be a very different experience of being in this room versus reading the closed captions versus reading the live stream or watching watching that, and so sort of holding that with us today in terms of having different experiences of the same exact moment and sort of the potentialities of translation itself. So whenever I speak, I always like to start at how I sort of think about who I am as a person in the world. A lot of folks call me an artist. Sometimes I'm an educator. Sometimes I'm an archivist. Sometimes I'm just annoying. But the title I really sort of lean into is learner. And this started a couple of years ago because each time someone would say to me, what do you do, what do you make, I didn't really have an answer as much as sort of a series of things that I enjoy doing, which is learning with other people, and revising that learning and sort of going on tangents. So most of my practice is really organized around what does it mean to produce knowledge, what does it mean to learn, what does it mean to unlearn, what does it mean to not necessarily produce an art object, but to be in the space of learning with other people. And so what you have in the image to the right, or the left rather, is the About the Author page of some books that I wrote when I was a wee little person. When I was 7 and 6 years old, the school in my district had a publishing center, and it was one of the things that my school decided to invest in, which I'm very grateful for. It was an older woman who would sit in a trailer, and you could go to her at lunch, and you could pick paper, and she would type out your books, and you would make a book. And I went ham on this because I was like, why would I not make books? I tell people that I made a dozen books. My mom likes to come in and be a hater, and she says, oh, you only made 6 books. And I was like, no, you're trying to take away my prolific title. I think I made a dozen books. And so I'm going to quickly read About the Author. The one on the bottom says, I'm 6 years old. My mom is a nice lady. I'm nice like my mom. I have 6 people in my house. I have more people. I have 15 people. My grandpa died. My name is Camila. Obviously, at 6, I was like kind of confused about syntax, just dropping in that my grandfather died. Also, my mom says there were not 15 people in my house, so there are definitely questions. My mom was like, who are these people? And I was like, I don't know, I counted 15. By the time I was 7, I started doing complex sentences and having a last name. So now my name is Camila Rashid. I'm 7 years old and go to Flood School. 7 years old is very young, but I like to read, write, and do art. I live in East Palo Alto. I'm in the 2nd grade. I'm a good reader. And so now at 37, it's very sort of humbling to look back at that and realize that the things that I stated that I enjoy doing, I get to do every day, and I just feel very humbled by the privilege to be here and the privilege to sort of look back at myself and do these things. So we have a short time together. And so in terms of time, I made these little graphics because I like drawing out my slides, just so we can sort of understand where we're going. Half of our time will be used for a short lecture and wandering. The other part will be used in translation play, which is why you have things on your table. And then we'll have like a sliver of time at the end for discussion. But as I noted, and students noted last night, I was teaching at Cooper Union, a class called Teaching as Social Practice. We talked about sort of the afterglow of an experience and what we do with the afterglow of it. And so the discussion doesn't end here. This is sort of like, a moment in time, and hopefully we find another space to be in one another's orbit to continue that conversation. So let's start wandering. Just hold on to this image. You're going to see it a lot. Just hold on to this image. It's very important. The original is here. We're going to be doing something with this later, and I'm not going to tell you who made it, but just hold on to it. So one of the things I do whenever I'm presenting about something is I love to go to Wikipedia, because I'm always just like Wikipedia as a source that is trying to consolidate all this world information to one place. I'm always interested in how they sort of consolidate information and then present it in what is seemingly the most basic or simple way. And so Wikipedia translates or explains translation as the communication of meaning of a source language text by means of an equivalent target language text. I started buzzing around for other definitions. I was like, ooh, this language of equivalency is really interesting to me. It feels very precise, and it feels very standardized. And so I found another definition of translation in relation to mathematics, which is the movement of a body from one point of space to another, such that every point of the body moves in the same direction over the same distance without any rotation, reflection, or change in size. And I got really fascinated with what I often have felt that translation is an attempt at equivalency or exactitude, I say something in English, it's translated into Spanish. I say something in Arabic, it's translated into French, right? This notion of equivalency. And so I've been thinking a lot about this, and I thought to myself, like, no translation has ever been equivalent, either because the context is not the same, sort of the intonation of your voice is not the same as may have been intended. And so I keep having this question in my head, which is, has anything ever really been translated in the way that we imagine it to be? If we think about translation as this process of exactitude, of one thing being translated into a target language, has anything really ever been translated? And so this is something I've been thinking about, and I don't have an answer for this. I like to pose questions that have no answers. This is sort of my thing. And so, in thinking about translation in my own practice, one thing that I want to note is that my translation practice is not about equivalency or exactitude, like literally not at all. In my practice, the thing that I'm most interested in is actually the pleasure of the impossibility of the ask. The ask of exactitude is what I'm interested in because I know it's impossible. And so when I think about translation, I'm thinking about what does it mean to pursue something that is impossible and the pleasure of sort of like getting to that thing but not actually getting there, but then also sort of doing the opposite of the logic of translation. If a translation is about exactitude, what does it actually feel like to go the opposite direction, to be a bit feral, to actually, as we'll see in a moment, to go off on a tangent? And so in thinking about this, the thing that has sort of driven my practice a lot is sort of thinking about the impossibility of comprehension and sort of the Western project, which is towards transparency and consistent, constant comprehension, right? There are limits to my knowledge, but we also understand how our knowledge systems are set up and the epistemological violence that happens in this pursuit of comprehension. And so does anyone know who this is? Say it. There we go. Anyone who's ever watched the show understands this like epic battle between these two characters and sort of pursuing comprehension. One person believes that comprehension can only be found in one field. The other one believes it can be found in another field. There's this cosmic battle that's happening, and there's this persistence around comprehension. And so what I want to offer today is sort of surrendering to the impossibility of comprehension and to sort of think through what could life, what could translation, what could being in the world actually look like if our pursuit wasn't always comprehension, if our pursuit might also be organized around the pleasure of just being in the presence of a language. And I actually told you, Chin, you have a podcast that is not in English, and I listened to that podcast. I don't know what the hell is going on. And the reason why I listened to it, because when I listen to it, there's part of me that's listening, so I'm like, oh, I like the melody of your voice, but there's also something about getting myself into a habit of not listening to things or not reading things or not doing things only for the transactional response, which is comprehension. What does it actually mean to enjoy something without the desire to have it, to hold it, to comprehend it? So in thinking about that, I'm going to reference like a bunch of texts tonight, and there's no need to comprehend anything. You're just here. The first place that I want to just go really quickly is a text that I constantly refer to in like basically every talk that I've given, so my apologies if you've seen this before. This is an essay from April 2020 from eFlux by Maria Inago-Clavo, and she's talking about indigenous art, and one of the things that she sort of goes on is she references Glissant and thinking about this Western desire for control. And so she writes, in his writing, Glissant analyzed the link between knowledge, possession, and control, observing that the etymology of the word comprehend, to understand, derives from prende, meaning to grab hold of or to grasp something. And I'm going to pause here because I'm going to do this a lot, like sideline conversations, and turn to you, Chin, and be like, remember? But when we were teaching in the south of France this summer, one of the things that came up is that Yu-Chin took a pause and was like, why is the way that we talk about things in relation to possession? We kept saying you have this thing, or you hold this thing, you grasp this thing, this sort of language of control and sort of setting something for your observation. Maria Inago-Clavo goes on to say, the ongoing Western colonial desire for transparency, despite the impossibilities of clarification, is what I term a confessional ontology, where to know also involves a certain ownership of things, nature, and other humans, the Western fantasy for control. In this ontology, extracting secrets is an important part of maintaining power, and spirituality contains many secrets. However, to decode spirituality is to undermine its potential, and worse still, to risk destroying the potential once and for all. I really love this excerpt because I think that it's speaking to this effort or initiative around translation, not just at a like political level, like why it can sometimes not feel good, but also at a very deeply sort of spiritual and corporeal level of what does it mean to sort of take away the magic of something, to take away the power of something by revealing secrets. How much of what we experience each day is experienced as pleasurable because we don't fully understand it. And so, in part of thinking about this, of course, there's tons of definitions of translation. One of the things I keep thinking about, if translation is a desire for access, a desire for proximity, a desire for transparency, a desire for comprehension, then one of the questions that I keep thinking about is to what extent can translation be thought about in the context of erotics? And so when I first posed this question, I was like, oh my God, everyone's gonna be thinking I'm talking about sex. And it's gonna be so embarrassing to sit on the stage and talk about sex and translation. And then I was like, first, calm down. Second, I was like, find your sources, collect yourself. And so I wanted to sort of point to Audre Lorde's The Uses of the Erotic, because I think that one of the things she does in this essay is sort of reorient the ways that we think about pleasure beyond sexual pleasure, right? And so as she's talking about erotic, she's not just talking about sexual pleasure as it's been sort of reduced to, but she's talking about that sense of satisfaction, that sense of fulfillment, that sense of pleasure that can be derived from anything that you're doing in a given day. And so what I want to do as we're sort of going on, as I'm looking at my clock and about to speed up, is sort of to think about the erotics of translation. And all the texts I'm about to reference, like with the exception of Walter Benjamin, like very few of them are actually referencing explicitly, very few of them are explicitly referencing translation. Yet somehow they've been scaffolding my understanding. One thing I will say is that while they may not use the word translation in their sort of analyses, what they do mention is this desire for comprehension, this desire for proximity, this desire to understand. So the first erotics that I want to sort of think about is sort of the pleasures of tangency. As Yu-Chen mentioned, when I went to her studio, she was working on this beautiful choral dictionary project. And I remember seeing all these choral pieces on the floor, and I was installing a show that was about translation. And she was like, have you read this essay by Walter Benjamin? I was like, what essay are you talking about? I feel like I've read everything about translation. I was wrong. There is this essay, The Task of the Translator, where Walter Benjamin talks about translation not necessarily as his equivalency, but he talks about it as a form of a tangent. And he writes, just as a tangent touches a circle fleetingly and at only a single point, and just as this contact, not the point, prescribes the law in accord with the tangent pursues its path into the infinite. He says a lot of words. The point is, he is thinking about translation as a form of tangency, that I take a sentence that may be in Arabic, and my translation is not an equivalency, but there is some sort of poetic responsibility that I have to sort of go off on a tangent, to find other spaces where I can make sense of things. And he writes, in the same way a translation touches the original fleetingly and only at the infinitely small point of meaning. So think about translation again, not as equivalency, even though you see these mathematical symbols, but thinking about touching, a slight caress, a very slight touch before flying off in another direction. And during our time together in the south of France, I do this thing where I do live processing, where someone is talking and I'm like searching for images simultaneously to sort of match what they're saying or to help me again translate or make sense of things. And so one of the things that I started to think about was escape velocity in relation to translation. Escape velocity is just the velocity that is necessary for something to escape its original orbit. So if something is going around a particular planetary whatever, escape orbit is the pace and direction that is necessary for it to actually escape that hold to go on to pursue other types of orbits. And so thinking about translation in the context of an escape orbit, or escape velocity or escape orbit. Another erotics that I want to sort of think about in relation to translation is inefficiency. So Amelia Broom wrote this text about Beverly Buchanan called Marsh Ruins, and she makes a reference to the work of Ben Ha, and this is the footnote. It's sort of talking about indirectness. And in that footnote, or that endnote, she writes, I do not intend to speak about, just speak nearby. And I really love this language of this notion of Trin Minha talking about, like, I don't want to talk about the thing, I kind of want to talk about the thing around the thing, but not the thing directly. And then it goes on to say, she has often reflected on the value of indirectness, stating, for example, that in a context of late capitalism where externalized directness is ultimately made to serve reductive and consumerist ends, it is important to work with indirection and understatement if meaning is to grow with each viewer, and if the interstices of active reinscription are to be kept alive. And there's something so deeply beautiful about a translation practice that is a bit slow and inefficient and not necessarily about the thing that you're translating, but sort of around the thing. So again, sort of thinking about this like slight caress, this slight touch before it goes off in another direction of speaking about the thing around the thing, but not the thing. Which brings me to sort of an erotics around anti-plot. Several years ago in Christina Sharp's Monstrous Intimacies, there's an epigraph where she makes reference to Derek Walcott's poem Six Fictions, and there's one line that says, "Pray for a life without plot, a day without narrative." And I've sort of held onto this line for several years because there's something so beautiful and applicable about it, but this sort of notion of not desiring a life that is so predetermined and predictated, or a day that's not so organized and overdetermined that there's actually a space for sprawl, for improvisation. So thinking about translation within the context of an erotics of an anti-plot, an erotics of sprawl. We're almost done with erotics, but never really done. We're just done because someone's going to pull me off stage. The other erotics I sort of want to think about in relation to translation comes from the work of Ashon Crawley, who in a range of texts, but particularly in Black Pentecostal Breath, talks about this notion of sustaining undoneness. And this is one of the more stunning things. I read a lot of stunning things. I'm like, wow, how did they get there? This is really beautiful to me because I think a lot of times, particularly within academic practice, the goal is to get to a conclusion. The goal is not to leave yourself so open that someone can overturn what you are saying. And so for him to sort of advance this notion of a Black Pentecostal aesthetics that's not focused on a conclusion, that's not focused on a final thought, but around this ethics or this sort of process of sustaining undoneness. And that sustaining undoneness in relation to translation can often look like translating something over 10 years. So I'm in the middle of a longitudinal translation project where I'm starting with this thing that I created in 2020. I'm just gonna keep translating it until I expire, because there's something very and deeply pleasurable, again, about this process of coming back to a thing that you've already determined is not finished, to keep revisiting it as a new person, as a person who's come into new ideas. I also, speaking of Ashton Crawley, want to sort of mention erotics of tearing. In his text, he also talks about this notion of not arriving at conclusions as much as he tarries with concepts. And so thinking about translation in the context of not so much of I took something and now I have the equivalency of it, but I took something and I'm sort of looking at it and piecing it together and trying to make sense of it, but I don't necessarily need to arrive anywhere as much as I sort of want to hang out with it. So there's notion of sort of being in the presence of an idea or a concept being very different than trying to conquer or to have dominion over a concept, to just be in its company, to think about these ideas as alive and living and such that we treat them in a way that they are alive and living, which means that we're in an ecosystem and this is not a situation of conquest. Ashton Crawley is on my mind because this is about him again. Thinking of possession and non-possession, he also sort of speaks to what I'm calling an erotics of non-possession in relation to this work. There's an essay called That There Might Be Black Thought, Nothing Music in the Hammond B3, which is just a beautiful essay. And at the center of the essay is this sort of discussion around this text that was found, that was written by an enslaved person, and most of it's been able to be translated. And then there's a center of that text by Ben Ali that is completely impenetrable. It cannot be translated, and scholars have spent years trying to figure out how to translate it, haven't figured it out, and it's been frustrating. And so one of the things that he takes up in this essay is to think about sort of the generative qualities of the incomprehensible. And he writes, what might it mean for us to think about a different relation to objects? Objects that are supposed to be easily captured but are just not. Again, what does it mean to actually be with an idea without wanting to own it? What does it mean to engage in an active translation that is not about comprehension, but may just be about the actual corporeal feeling of being with something that may not make sense? So again, just thinking about like literally what it means to hold something but not want to possess it. We're going to talk about Zora Neale Hurston. I'm sure someone's going to ask me what all these sources are, so if that happens, then I'll share them. I want to talk about translation in relation to evasiveness, because I think so much of translation is organized around to what extent can something be made legible. And so I want to bring up sort of an erotics of sort of refusing the task that's put in front of you, and thinking about the work of Zora Neale Hurston, who did a lot of work around collecting Black folklore. In this 1935 text, she talks about collecting folklore. And I'm going to read the whole thing because I think it's hilarious, and it's one of like my most favorite things. But in talking about that, she writes, "And the Negro, in spite of his open-faced laughter, his seeming acquiescence is particularly evasive. You see, we are a polite people, and we do not say to our questioner, 'Get out of here.' We smile and tell him or her something that satisfies the white person, because knowing so little about us, he doesn't know what he is missing. The Indian resists curiosity by a stony silence. The Negro offers a feather-bed resistance. That is, we let the probe enter, but it never comes out. It gets smothered under a lot of laughter and pleasantries. The theory behind our tactics, the white man is always trying to know into somebody else's business. All right, I'll set something outside the door of my mind for him to play with and handle. He can read my writing, but he sure can't read my mind. I'll put this play toy in his hand, and he will seize it and go away. Then I'll say my say and sing my song." In this context, there is an effort by folks who are coming to Black people during the 30s, trying to collect these stories and folklore to sort of translate that particular experience, as Yu Chen was talking about, this desire for transparency. And there is this very specific tactic that she speaks about of refusing that translation. That translation, there's an erotics around this intentional and I was going to say invasiveness, but there is an invasiveness around this intentional evasiveness. I think we're almost at the end of erotics, and we're going to like play. There's also something to be said around the erotics of eminence. This is a poem from Lucille Clifton from 1974 called "I'm Not Done Yet." And in this poem, it reads, "I'm not done yet. As possible as yeast, as imminent as bread, a collection of safe habits, a collection of cares, less certain than I seem, more certain than I was, a changer. I continue to continue. Where I've been most of my lives is where I'm going." And I love this poem so much because I think I've applied it to like basically everything, from learning to like everything. But I think in relation to translation, which sort of what really hooks me in is sort of thinking about an erotics of ongoingness, an erotics of non-ending. This notion that you can continue to translate a thing every single day, not necessarily because the original text changes, because the person entering the text is changing each day. So sort of the renderings or the things that are sort of making sense of are changing, and sort of thinking about our own self-revision in relation to that. There's some tweets that I want to mention here. There's also, for me, this erotics around poetic and precision. When I think about translation, sorry, the citation's wrong here. When I think about translation, one of the things that's most exciting to me is to sort of think about different vernaculars and the impossibility of translating vernaculars across time and across scales. And so one of the things that I spent a lot of time on Twitter in 2020, because like, what else are you gonna do? And one of the things that kept coming up was this tweet, which is, "What's your favorite Black unit of measurement?" And as a Black person, I thought this was hilarious. I was like, dang, I never really thought about how a lot of the vernacular units of measurement are so terribly imprecise, but if you know what they mean, you know what they mean, and so you're not confused, but everyone else is confused. And so there's something also pleasurable about the poetics of imprecision in relation to translation. But if I ask someone like how long it's gonna take to get something, I remember living in South Africa, my friends would be like, "I'll be there now." And I was like, "What is now? They're like, now, I'll be there now. It is an imprecise thing, but you figure out what now means. And so there's something deeply beautiful about the non-translatability of imprecision and these sort of measurement, these units of measurement. Catherine McKittrick was doing her thing on Twitter, and of course across text. One of the things she mentions is sort of Black privacy and sort of paying attention to this. And so there's also this poetics of this erotics of poetic withholding. What does it mean to hold something back in this effort to translate, to actually say this is not translatable, and I don't actually want to give this over for the project, the state project of translation. And I think we'll end here with this erotics. We have other erotics. We don't have time for all the erotics tonight. We'll just finish with this erotics of indirectness. So has anyone ever been told inshallah by a Muslim? Yeah, we're terrible. When we say inshallah, that means we're not going to do it. It is a way, it just means God willing, and a lot of times we say, like, inshallah, I will be at your birthday party. Like, if God allows me to get there, I will get there. But if God does not allow me to get there, I will not be there. And so there's something very pleasurable about indirectness in the sense that, like, when this meme I love, when they end the conversation with inshallah, in conclusion, I ain't coming. I said inshallah because now I'm handing it over to God, so if I don't show up, blame God, don't blame me. It wasn't my fault. So there's something also really beautiful in relation to translation around this indirectness, this impossibility of getting around the thing that doesn't want to be got around. We're gonna move on. But there's something about interiority. You should look at Kevin Quashi's book, The Sovereignty of Quiet, Beyond Resistance in Black Culture. It's really beautiful and talks a lot about quietude in relation to translation. So I'm going to come back to this, and we're going to go play, because I talked a lot, and I really want to limit my talking. Actually, I don't want to limit. I love talking. I lie and say I want to limit it, but if you let me talk, I'll just keep talking. I want to remind us again that my translation practice is not organized around equivalency or exactitude, and so again, for me, it is about the pleasure of not doing the thing that I've been asked to do, and so that's what we're going to be actually playing with. So we're going to do translation play. There's tons of resources, not tons, there are like a couple things on your table. You will need a writing utensil. If you don't have one, please let me know. One thing that I want to say before we proceed is if your impulse is equivalency, go the opposite direction. If when I give the task, your response is, okay, bet, I'm going to find the equivalent to this thing, go the opposite direction. We're trying to actually play in a way that doesn't sort of restrain us to this sort of particular habit of always trying to make sense of something. So, and thinking about that, there's an Erotics of Decentering. There's this book, and I got this when I was at KW in Berlin, and I was like, Yu-Chen, I found this amazing book. I can't wait to see you to give it to you. And then I started reading it and writing in it, and so she can't have it, and I have to get her another book. But one of the things that's in this book is this sort of notion of leaving space empty so that God could rush in. And so in this lecture, she says many years ago, Carson gave a lecture to teachers and writers in New York City at which she introduced to me the concept of leaving a space empty so that God could rush in. I knew a bit about this concept from my boyfriend at the time who was big into bonsai. In bonsai, you often plant the tree off center in the pot to make space for the divine. And so one thing I want to offer to people, you don't need to make space for the divine if that's not your practice, but sort of in this practice of translation, thinking about sort of making space for other things to happen, so not centering yourself or centering the desire for comprehension. So you guys remember this image? Yes, we all remember this? Okay, I'm not going to tell you who made it, but it's going to be really special at the end when you find out who made it. So we're going to take this image, and we're going to time this like super quick, because one of the things I learned as an educator is that sometimes when you give people too much time, they start overthinking and overdetermining things. I'm going to ask everyone to take a white sheet of paper that is in front of them, so everyone should have a white sheet of paper. Grab it. Take 15 seconds to grab that white sheet of paper. If you don't have a white sheet of paper, please raise your hand so you can be given a white sheet of paper. I'm going to stand up and just take the mic now, because we're at the moving point. If you don't have paper, please let me know. So I'm going to ask you all, you have 2 minutes to do this. I'm going to ask for you to translate this image that is here into a series of folds. That's literally the only instruction. Whatever folding pattern this inspires, go. You have 2 minutes. Translate this into a series of folds. Go. Thank you. Take another minute 30. Yep, I have a timer. We're almost done. Take another minute 15. Very excited to see these translation of folds. Again, if your impulse is to make the thing as it is, equivalency, try to go in the opposite direction, something a bit more feral, something a bit more wild, something that is intentionally not the thing that you're looking at. Take another 45 seconds to wrap up. If you are done, look at the person next to you, see what they have made. Say hello, how was your evening? What did you eat today? Are you in love? Do you want to date me? This is a great place to meet people. Take another 30 seconds. All righty. Another 10 seconds. I'm seeing some lovely folds. I'm seeing some sculptural work, some installation artists in here. I'm going to take this and put this in a museum. This is really beautiful. All righty, take another 10 seconds with your folds. Another 5, 4, 3, 2. Some more translation. Question. You have a colored card on your table. So look around to see if you have a card that looks like this. Some are blue, some are green. Find a card, take it. Make sure other people have a card at your table. If you do not have a card, please let me know and we'll get you one. If there are not enough at your table, you can also tear it in half for someone else. I lied, I don't have any more cards left, so please share if you do not have one. So you now have a minute and a half. I would like for you to translate this image into a question. Any question whatsoever, please take the next minute and 40 seconds. What question does this image inspire in thinking about translation? Turn this into a question for me. Take another minute, 15 seconds. Don't overthink this. Whatever question seems appropriate. Another 45. These questions do not need to be written in English. I'll even take asemic text, scripts, however you want to write this out. Take another 35 seconds. Another 10. So excited about these questions. Another 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Alrighty, we have 2 more rounds. So we did a question. Now I'm asking for you to translate this into a single sentence. Everyone should have some Post-its at their table. Take a Post-it. How about you translate this into a single sentence? Please take, I always say 2 minutes, but I always sort of skim off sometime. Take a minute and some change. I want to see what those sentences are. Take one sentence, however you might describe a sentence. I actually have beef with sentences because they force me to be concise and to finish a thought. Does anyone else need Post-its? We're good? Alrighty. You need some? Nope, you're good? Okay, perfect. Take another minute. What sentence would you translate this image into? You're good? Another 45. Another 30. We have 10 seconds left before our very last round. Alrighty, our very last round, same image. I would like for you to take the baby Post-its on the table and translate this image into an equation. Think about an equation broadly. It could be a mathematical equation, it could be a word-based equation, I don't care, but translate this image into an equation of some sort. Take a minute and 45 seconds. The nice thing about this activity is you can literally do nothing wrong. Another 45. Yuchen and Fan, I promise we're almost ending. I was waiting for the Apollo cane to drag me off the stage, but luckily we don't have to do that. Take another 35 seconds. If you are done, start collecting your items, looking at them, thinking about, where did I get with this? Did I go off on a far, far tangent? Who made this image? Why did they make it? Why did this lady make me translate it? Take another 10 seconds. And I'm just gonna ask for 4 people to share very quickly. So if you are very excited and interested in using your indoor, outdoor voice to share, please get prepared. Alrighty, so we've done 4 rounds of translation. This again is the image, and then thinking about sort of Pharaoh translation or sort of going the opposite of equivalency, are there 4 people who might want to share a sentence, a word, or an equation? Don't be shy, I can see all of you. I will cold call. Wonderful, thank you, Chen. Right there in front of you.
Okay, so my question was, why do you always go underwater?
Ooh, thank you. Thank you very much. Why do you always go underwater? Thank you for getting us started. Let's hear 3 more people. Yeah. Yeah, can you? Yeah. Sorry. I'm like trying to. I think that's the best we're gonna do. Oh, there you go. Thank you. Anything.
I don't remember what this is a prompt for, but why are you a misshapen carrot? Why are you attempting to be a potato? Why are you attempting to look like a country whose existence I am not aware of?
Okay, poets. All right, this is lovely. Everyone's, why did you choose to go underwater? Yeah, I'm loving everything. If we get 2 more people, maybe someone in the back, so we can even out the balance here, way in the back. If I can get there, who can get there first? Okay, perfect. Okay, this is now a choreography of how there you go. And if one more person can raise their hand as Fan is walking back so we know who to pass the mic to on this last one. We need just one more person. 4 is important to me. Go ahead.
What does it mean to ride on a horse from 2 sides and to circle around a kind of pit with a totemic marker of a headstrong infinity there to sanctify it all?
Thank you. So the fact that anyone is coming with anything in 2 minutes just blows my mind. So when you guys come up with amazing things, I'm kind of like, this is literally more than I could ever dream of. Because we are short on time, I'm going to skip my 4-person rule and move on to reveal a couple of things, because I kind of like the poetics of concealment and revelation. And so we have one last thing, which is around vocalization we won't have time for. But the actual artist is my godchild, Callie. Yes. And I chose to use her artwork, which she drew for me one day, because she gave this whole beautiful explanation of what it meant, and I could not remember what she said. I just could not. And so when I was preparing the rest of my slides today, I was like, oh, what if I actually use it as a prompt to sort of get at what she may have been thinking about? So I would like to share these translations with Callie. She's 2 years old and started preschool today, pre-3 grade. Yeah, I'm very excited for her. So if you would like to share your translations with her, as we're closing, I'm going to just ask for you guys to put them to the edge of the table, because you guys will be working on another product that requires materials, and I'll collect them at the end. If you don't want to share them with Callie, that is perfectly fine, but I think she'll be really excited. We don't have time for questions. Take my time. You should never tell me to take my time. Let's take 3 minutes for questions, just because I actually really want to do that selfishly, and so I don't want to talk anymore, so I can do that. Yes? I grew up with 4 brothers, and so you have to compete to get some time into the conversation. So, yeah. Anything else before we proceed? Yes? Of course I can. You guys all RSVP'd, right? So I will make sure that you, Chin, and Fan can send you a list. Yep. Anything else? Yeah. I'll be your 4th person. Yes, please. Yes.
My equation was sky plus mold equals like a squiggle.
Thank you for making sure your equation was pictorial. That makes me very happy. And hopefully there's a way for me to share how she then is interpreting what you guys have. Thinking about this as longitudinal translation that goes on sort of forever. Hopefully we can keep this feedback loop going. Thank you for playing. Cool stuff. So yeah, thank you.
Hello, thank you. Um,
Thank you so much, Camila. I think erotics here from ethics as well. I think that we can all, I know that I will bring it into my life and pause at that moment of incomprehension and just feel what my body and my are trying to do, either to resist that comprehension, move through it, or to let it be incomprehension. So to me, that was such an ethical
I think
thing.
she's just organizing her stuff. Your words of appreciation. I have so much to respond to, but I will share a few. I think I have seen some of these materials before, but they are made fresh every time when you utter them again. You bring in new passion, new feeling, new experience, reasoned life into these quotes that has been generated a long time ago, and they are just text, but you have this capacity to reincarnate text into life, and I feel I'm injected with a dose of vitality, and I amazing and to sit with your words for long. I love the idea of the afterglow of experience. I think our conversation has had long shadows, in the past few years. And yes, whenever I try to make a friend, I share Benjamin. And I will share a few maybe later tonight as well in the relationship to other artists.
And I think beautifully segueing off of Camila's table work, I introduce Adam Cavanaugh, who's going to be our next artist. Adam told me once that he picks words from a constant waterfall of language, and I would invite all of you to consider how words appear in your mind's eye, because that was such a formative conversation for me, because for me it feels like words come one by one out of still water. They have to be summoned from the depths. So Adam's description of this totally different state of language having and language being was such a wonderful revelation for me. Adam is a novelist and occasional poet for whom Samuel Beckett is constant as a northern star. Workshop, we met deeply in a workshop on mourning and grief, and since then we've had countless conversations, ironically lucid and fluid conversations, about stoppages of the tongue, blockages of word circulation, and all the million other little fatigues of speech. Adam is a total stone in my life, a source of calm and wisdom for me in his practice and in his ethics of living. And soon you will see that he has the face of every Irish novelist blended into one face.
I have a few words too. Why are you always underwater? I had the pleasure to take Adam's workshop during our residency, a secret component to this public event, because Fan, as a mushroom, really want the spore to spread, want each other to exchange molecules before we exchange our words. And upstate, Adam gifted us a very special substance, which you will all be gifted to. It's legal, I think. It's prepared with so much labor and thoughtfulness, and it is such a treasure. You gave me words, you gave me methodology, you gave me strengths, but you gave me a liquid that leaves marks. And I think that's the essence of every communicative gesture, to make marks that's visible to others, to the one you want to communicate to. And thank you for sharing with us today. Adam.
That's great. Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. So before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge all the contributions of the other residents, not only their workshops and writing, but their company, willingness, fellowship. I'd also like to thank the Poetry Project for making Christy and Aaron. Education and boldness has enabled us to come together, live together, work together, and I think you all here are beginning to understand the delicacy and attentiveness of their curatorial collaboration. So, to begin some context, I recently moved back to the rural area where I grew up in southern Ontario. It's a place that's still haunted for me in various ways, but especially by language. So when Fan and Yu Chen proposed their themes, it seemed like a good time to excavate. Prior to my arrival at the Elizabeth Murray Residency, I created a text and a process over 3 weeks approaching the question of language loss in a cultural, aesthetic, linguistic, and biological sense. This text was not meant to exist for very long. The gathering point of my time writing it was an idea to produce ink from the staghorn sumac on my road and provide blunted, rusty screws as utensils for participants. The sumac was boiled, reduced, and its pigment affixed to silica, then dried over 3 weeks under the sun in Consicon, where I live. What remained was approximately 20 grams of powder, most of which was used during our workshop at the residency. My hope, I think, is to elongate the tension in the moment between hand and page. It would be difficult to find the right viscosity of ink, and not all screws would be as effective at holding or carrying that ink to the page. I would tempt a small crisis between these factors, the meeting of which was in some way materialized by elements outside of any of our control. The residents considered my instructions, but interpreted and acted on them variously, by transcribing or by leaving words off the page, opting instead to arrange symbols, practice other languages, non-languages, smearing ink, or using the to carve shallow on the page. So, the text I'll read tonight is in the sense of that at the Elizabeth. Collapse shares roots with collapsion, but to collapse in its early sense is to fall together into an irregular mass through the loss of rigidity. This is precisely what Yu Chen and Fan enabled for us, a falling down together, down towards this space, down onto the floor of the barn where we first practiced this, down to the page, the material, the voice, breath, interstice. So tonight, we'll extend that process. Which was never meant to survive, it will now include the material produced by the residents, visual and textual. Had a bit more time and material, it would be my desire to do this multiple times, each time incorporating the writing and images produced in the course of things and eventually outgrowing itself completely. So, I believe you have dishes, small dishes with that sumac on your table now. I'd invite you to join this process, and I'd invite you, before we start, to take a quiet moment and reflect on your own relationship to language. As Fan initially suggested, do you know your limits in language, and are they bordered by other languages, habits of syntax, fidelity to genre, refusals of tradition? You may think of this as a free write or an exploration of these materials, and if anyone feels uncomfortable handling rusty screws, we do have latex gloves. I don't know if they've been provided, but perhaps if you have any discomfort around this, you can raise your hand and they can be brought to you. At this point, I would like to invite Gerard, Eddie, Ami, Yu Chen, and Fan to stand with me. Initially, I think maybe we're thinking to distribute, but there's so many people here that maybe it's best to come around the table. And I think if we could begin the slides, and yeah, that looks good. So yes, you can begin free writing or exploring the use of the materials. Dip the screws into the sumac provided on your table and begin experimenting. My approach today is not new. Our approach today is not new. Language is not new. Situations facing it are. You will take the blunted screws for utensils. You will try to write with the remaining sumac ink. We will read, and for the most part, it will be background noise. If you like, let our voices pulse in and out of focus. Our thoughts, concerns, phrases may initiate your own. You may begin writing whenever. In 2016, I awoke in the night with a violent defamiliarization of language. Its patterns of sound and meaning were replaced with what felt like a dreadful truth, a cacophony of senseless bestial expulsion. In medical terms, the temporary loss of language is called transient aphasia. That is what I will call this situation. The moment in the middle of the sentence when you stumble on the wrong word, wrong syntax, and you are faced with the uncanny task of resituating yourself in a labyrinth of externalized symbols meant to represent the project of communication. Yu Chen.
Fix, repair. Droops, hoarders. Will not. Thin string. Air friction. Off chin alone. Upright as bills of unable sting. Junkway selling stock blast. Soon words. Doing. Tinct. Do. Irreducible pint. Prolonged. Coward speech. I'll stop. Such you. Means degenerative. Can type. Of neither. Would. Attempted. Use. Digestive. Deck 3. Task but. Revive. Hearing. Codex or. Owners as. Field of limits. Motor. Fuel stuff. Is sea of delimit. Today. January. Now. Now. I. Means. Not his. Will cannot. Banal give. Might. Task. Go. What?
In European classification, this sumac is called staghorn for the resemblance to velvet covering deer antlers before they are fully calcified, and the deer rub it off on trees, sometimes leaving it on branches, bloody, silken. This has everything and nothing to do with you. As you write, your hand will not catch your mind. The mind must remain present with the hand. Wait for it to finish that word. Stay with slowness, coping. If not, the mind races ahead, thwarted, unable to achieve seamlessness, the illusion of seamless, and resents the hand. The mind, eager to transfigure words from thoughts to material, doesn't recognize that something is slowing the process. Even here, in the sense of decision, there is crisis. Do you wait for the hand or go on inside the mind, tabulating the words you'd like to string together, trying to hold it together, and for what? Why not trust the hand?
Cue, write, read, wake you, everything ever adhesive, ambition, disposed of tongue, desire, experience. Boil system, values, trials capable, meet drive floor, downtime, reach time, you time, nail sumac time, facet drive, relate to language, rep.
I am now in a green room. I'm thinking about you. Project is a word I distrust. Language is not a project. Language is projective, vibratory gas propelled by the lungs, shaped by the mouth and the tongue. Language is a material made of flesh, air, resistance. Language does not only carry meaning, viruses, odor, aerosolized vapor from inside us. Studies in paleoanthropology suggest our ability to vocally differentiate sounds is an effect of an evolutionary adaptation of hominids' oversized tongue. The chin, or mental region, appears to extend as a result of the need to cope with a large tongue required for neonatal nutrition, along with the development of the hyoid bone, which carries the weight of the tongue. The evolution of modern cervico-craniofacial anatomy responds to cranial flexion, the result of hominids developing upright posture. This posture increased a risk of choking by pressing the tongue against the back of the throat. As I accumulate scraps and misfires, written language seems inert, dead, incapable of stirring anyone into any state other than comprehension. Around me is pileup of articles and books and text messages and emails and bills and newsletters. Junk is less a category of object than experience. If you've walked into a family basement and seen the volume of miscellaneous objects, you understand. It is not that these objects lack discreteness, it is that you are unable to disambiguate them from one another. Junk is our crisis. How do I dispose of a half-full aerosol can sitting in my basement, etc.? Junk, the word, its origins, arrives by sea as an ancient merchant vessel of Javanese invention, jong, recordings of which date to the 9th century. European languages account for the vessel in a variety of ways: jonkyu, yonk, yuanga, yunko, yonko, zonchi. Idiomatic use of the word refers to garbage from ships that might be reused, bits of cable, rope. In this sense, conventional language is clearly junk, born of travel by merchants, used to sell and trade, eminently reusable, reconfigurable. Could the dulling of language be recast as a moment to recycle, to pull from, rearrange, take stock of new use?
In 2015, I was a dissonant determination made of dissolved skin. It's silent day, too literal, too many trees, thirsty, repairing my sumac, bloodying my arrangement, have my own ideas of teaching grass, brush, blind, finish, seamed resentment. You copied the door, shapka, door. I am just so relaxed. My fingers, all of object, Philopita, no object, no bad day, Mercedes-Benz, cute date, intense date, hand in my pants, but fingers, hair in Beirut, your office is my toilet.
In mason jars, the pigment from the staghorn boils in water on the stovetop. After hours, the rusty-tinted water has reduced to an opaque, viscous dye without resemblance to the plant. Certain contexts invigorate language, speaking to the dead, in front of a crowd, meeting someone you want to know. Language, as representation, reduces experience, which, being private, is irreducible. Language consists of dead metaphors, the remnants of our critical endeavors to communicate what hasn't been or seems impossible to say. This has everything and nothing to do with you. At my house, there is a pine table, soft wood. Its surface has markings. Each morning, she wrote lists for the day on its surface. There is still illegible cross-hatchings of indentations, chicken scratch from the decade-long process during which she lost language, left it on the table. Aphasia, in her case, was prolonged and slowed, the cadence of her attempts, her stutters, issues with certain words and syllable counts. During that process, I followed along, learned the degraded language, followed the dysphagic tongue. There was, in the end, only the two of us in communication. The speech pathologist text tool enabling it. Counterfactual, follow aphasia further all the way down, learning your unlearning, cease assigning it meaning, stop bridging the gap, which increasingly becomes not a bridge to, but over you. We take a simple sentence. Language is incapable of expressing silence. Now we arbitrarily shift the alphabet 2 values to the right while retaining vowel placement to simulate dysphagic symptoms, such that A is now C, C is now F, etc. What are we left with? Napjuai, U, Ipiardna, O, Ezratupja, U, Pini. We learn this. Napjuai means language. U means is. Ipiardna means incapable. O means of. Ezratupch means expressing. Yun P means silence. This is soon natural, though to others quite obscure. After some time, language generates further. Now we are left only with the initial sounds of the words. Nap, U, Ip, O, Ezra, Yun. Now the initial sounds of these words may stimulate our memory of circumstances in which we've heard the arrangement before, though nothing like certainty can be assured. After more time, we are left, let us say, with only a type of look, a type of expectancy. This might produce a context of care, of imagination, in which we try to guess needs based on time of day, memory of a person's likes, dislikes. The terminal point of Broca's aphasia is the degeneration of the frontal, temporal, and parietal lobes of the brain, at which point language can neither be comprehended nor coordinated. We are now faced with no language at all. Would this produce a silence constitutive of translation, one that could meet the needs of the aphasic silence?
Robust, zoyalize, tu I.
Work in systematic zoology and evolutionary biology has attempted to reconstruct the conditions of terrestrialization of aquatic animals. The hydrodynamic tongue enables mudskippers to capture prey on land, holding it in water stored in the posterior buccal cavity, then returning to water. The use of prehensile tongue to forage prey on land is believed to be a major step towards terrestrialization by vertebrates. The use of the tongue for predation was critical in the creep towards land, yet its formation must be inferred in the fossil record through the hyoid bone, which is the only historical trace of the tongue. It would seem that the verbal communications was an accidental effect of our digestive system. Evolution of the larynx, meant to aid in our feeding habits, accidentally enabled new physical arrangements of the mouth and throat. Once spoken, human physiology took the opportunity, developed laryngeal muscles to aid in this new beneficial operation.
It's go to beat myself into believing what of the dead is left. Do guards my feet against third. The sun, what does this third sound like? Making the wind, the tongue guards the argument against its peace. Distance guards time against its end. The sun guards us against the night.
The deck screws in your hands are possibly 12 years old, depending on how long they sat on the shelves before they were sunk into the lumber. The sumac panicle is maybe 3 months, the sun that dried it, etc. But we want to consider, what is language doing as I configure the facts within its folds? What does it mean for language to articulate the sumac is 3 years old? Does it manage the task? Does it elaborate the experience of dipping blunted screws in its reduced biochemical pigment? I shudder, I write, I shudder. A friend told me he stopped looking at bird names. He didn't know how, after quenching his thirst for fact, the bird became a mnemonic for a word, which was insufficient to describe the excitement of recognizing, of hearing it. As I write this, the cicada trill and young monarch butterflies no larger than quarters fly coltishly past the window. The earliest codex were written by scribes. Scriptio continua was the scribal practice of writing without symbol separation in order to record their masters without missing or arranging a thing. For long stretches of written history, the script still subordinates the page to the mouth. As a medical phenomenon, transient aphasia occurs as a result of a stroke, ischemic attack, migraine, seizure. None of these happen. This is to say, my experience was not of medical aphasia. Is there another way to describe this crisis? For that period, language was unable to convey meaning from or to me. What followed was a period of extreme logorrhea in which I was apparently trying to find the cusp of meaning once again. the desire to grope and explore connection and limits of experience through language, to overcome, exhaust, dissipate the self in language. But the self and language are dyadic, forming a relational motor. Extending the metaphor, which I hate, would be to think of a carburetor and its mechanistic reliance on fuel-air enrichment by way of the choke valve. In the case of language, moving from the aspirated fuel source of oral communication towards the airless substitute of the written can, if not eliminate absolutely, reduce the reliance of language on self and self-fashioning.
I'm in the self-reflective trenches, meeting someone I want to know, now dust for cough, as tables for your mom, and ready powdered. 1 foot is unbearable. I'm going to do the math. You crave sonnets, surely, broken, perennial. It's this man's task. He wishes tongues for telltale land. I told you about my ancestors. Show me the newspaper that weds my originary tentacle. 2 of us, 1 toe each. Eyebrows, bird, watchtower. You gave me, me haven't, have not gave apparently. Dispelled metaphor, you hate, not surreal enough. Serene, like a fly. Today I was in Cuba. It was so sunny. I could not see you swimming towards eyelashes in the sand. Reeling, actually in the trenches. Chin talk, my irreducible craft I am enjoying, not listening to you, impossibly, your task, this mint. Not listening, ignoring.
Date to language, began to communication. By present from inside, are feeding up bird itself. As I write with is nap juai, meaning vowel placement. Between the comprehended new physical sense. The earliest our hand and you stuttered in the first of your unlearning. Stock blast each building habits and books and to self in a labyrinth of the question made of travel by merchant to know and epileptical reliance. When Muguluba proposed to silica then door shaped by factors, the mind eager, 3 tasks but revive what? In European lands is believed to reconstructions in medical endeavors to clinics or having it can. If not only the 2 of us, this arranged symbol, separating to convey, catch your thought, ink at all, to arrival, aphasia. Is there, was the explosion, was cricketing in my pants, but fingers, hair, friction, towards this multiple tongue. There another result of a stroke is chemical phenomenon, translating together. Junk is less a category of sentence. Language, B, realizations. In the 2 stirring, anyone in the plant, certain communicate what hasn't been interfering. the gap which dates the cicada, trill and text message, produce ink from a dread ton desire, experience boil sumac, time deck 3, materialization branches, what followed was prolonged, attempts her steps towards, eyelashes ton myself, guards sound like making, upright be reused bit ends. I like material it will, and Aaron I shudder its due, what fell down from our ability. Faced, drive, if I had speech.
Thank you so much to Ami, Fan, Gerard, Eddie, and Yu Chen.
And to Adam for I would love to invite all of you to come and take your paper and lay it out in a temporary exhibition.
Or I can gather.
Yes, or Yu Chen will gather. If you're okay with that, of course you can also keep it where it is. Some of it might be delicate. Maybe, Eddie, if you want to gather some papers as well. Yeah, they're papers, so that we can put them out front. And if you're okay with us keeping these papers and giving them a kind of afterlife in a book form, please do donate them to us. But if you would prefer not to, please keep them for yourself.
Hi. I guess now I see the chance to share another Walter Benjamin quote. In the same essay, Task of Translator, he described that language is a broken vase. It was once intact, but now all the languages we speak are fragments, pieces. So of course, there's no correspondence. Of course, there's no equivalence, but they support and complement and can come together. And I hope this has been the experience of last night and tonight. Our approach to language is not unified nor smoothed over, but everyone has a different temporality, different texture of voice, different experience with life.
I love that that's the part that you wavered on, experience of life. And I love Adam's workshop because it also teaches us when we find our limits of language, what else do we have in store? Do we have gesture? Do we have drawing? Do we kind of move the nail around on the page? What are the words we're called upon to use when we're listening to that piece? And we're using this very limited kind of sketching material. So it's very, like, viscerally pedagogical. Yeah.
And I think it is also in its way translation. It translated maybe a certain tremble of your hand, or certain wavelengths of your pulse, or the life of the screw and the sumac tree all merged together into a new script, a new dialect, a new tone. It was a translation of so many directions happening at the same time.
And of course, we invite you all to come and take a look at it at the end of the night and gather in your vision what we've collected here.
I guess I'll take the chance to thank you again, Adam.
Thank you, Adam. And speaking of gathering in our vision, our final presenter artist tonight is Eddie Wang. Eddie and I share a complex history of abandonment from which we both draw deep melancholy and a delight in the absurdity of life. Diaspora and immigration led us to separate from our parents at a formative age, and so we both turned to psychoanalysis, questionably, to help us answer the insistent questions of the self that were left over from this abandonment. We always talk for hours, or we jam together on various instruments as amateurs, co-ghosting each other in the same room, the same house, and rationing square footage when we have to share the same bed. To hear Eddie and Yuchen play piano as part of their becoming friends was immeasurably beautiful.
I only met Eddie a few days ago, and my initial thought was, he's ridiculous. And after a few days, I started to acquire his language, and I started to lean in the frequency where he speaks, and now I totally get him. He's not ridiculous, but the rest of the word is. He makes total sense. He asked me questions about usefulness. We are almost a decade apart, and those questions sound so fresh to me, and the conversation made me feel a beauty of time. It was beautiful to have those questions. It is also beautiful to have forgotten those questions, and it is beautiful to come together. And it reminded me that to love is to learn, because without love, how else would you have patience for someone else's questions? Without love, how would you open up your already established system and literacy? Without love, how would you lean in into another? So join me to love Eddie.
Eddie Wang.
Hello, thank you for for everything, Fan and Yuchen, and thank you everybody working so hard at the poetry project for being great and awesome. So I'm mostly going to be presenting a film which was made at the Elizabeth Murray Residency, and it was shot in a night and like edited in like 3 days because I just got here like 2 days ago. And it was like, I took this 90-minute cut of material and turned it into the 12 minutes you will see. And essentially, the point of all this is I'm gonna show this film, and it's gonna be a sort of instructional, because you guys will sort of make your own films tonight. So get familiar with everybody in your table, because they're gonna be your tight-knit cast and crew. And so, I mean, it'll make a lot more sense when I read the instructions for how the film was made. The instructions, if you guys want to, obviously, you will follow and endeavor to follow. But the whole idea was I wanted to take seriously the idea of film outside sort of the regime of the director. I wanted to deterritorialize the practice of filmmaking so it wasn't so author-based, right? I just find when I make films on my own, it's very hard for me to take on the role of the capital D director. I just don't really have it in me. But I also love the language of cinema and sort of thinking with and through the image. So that really prompted me to think of alternatives of what it would mean to engage in film practice. And obviously, this continues on from a lineage of radical cinema, Godard's Marxist films, Fluxus cinema, third cinema, et cetera, but suffice to say, there's a lot to say because I studied film theory, so I'm not gonna say it, because I'm gonna spare you guys all. But the instructions for this film I'll read out so you guys sort of know what is going on when it projects, because otherwise it might seem a bit ridiculous just because the world itself is ridiculous, not because I am. And then maybe this will help you guys think about how the practice part of the film portion will work. So the film is called The Gymnasium. And how it will work is that there will be a series of roles one will be able to take. Basically, one can be a director, a reader, or a performer. And there are multiple spaces for where you guys will film, if you want to, obviously. So there's the 3 places where the lights are, and then there's some places outdoors in the courtyard, which we are allowed to use. I'm very grateful for that. So as the director, one person at the table is gonna direct the performers and how they could move and act, as well as use a camera to record the performers. And here one can just use their phone camera. And then there will also be someone called the reader who will free associate or even just read a text they like a lot that they want vocalized. They can really just bring anything. And so there'll be a reader reading material and a director directing, and then the rest of people who want to participate will be sort of performing and interpreting the direction of the director. So for example, here's the example I'm giving. Let's say the reader is reading a poem they wrote about barns, right? And it's about barns and so forth. The director will decide that they want the performers to pretend to be dandelions, stuck in the process of deciding whether they want to be a weed or a tasty stew. And so then, the director will be like, okay, pretend to be dandelions, stuck in the process of being weeds or a tasty stew. And then the performers on the table will interpret this prompt however they want, completely freely and openly, to engage in the process of becoming dandelion. And then the director with their camera will be able to record that action however they like, moving the phone, zigzagging, so on and so forth. And then while that is all happening, the reader is going to be reading their material. And then once they finish reading their material, the director will end the scene. And we should have enough time to do some rotations. So then after one person is the director, someone else can sort of be the director. And then someone else can be the reader, and you'll all have fun, again, if you want to. I don't know if that made any sense, but okay, awesome. And we'll see what sort of the blueprint of what we did at the residency, and then you'll either be so excited to do it, or you'll walk out near the end and try to hide as fast as you can. But whatever the case is, thank you just for being here. Yeah.
Under this small is purse. Will to power is cabinet in Perth. 250 trees. Soon the sea. Drill. Heart and mouth wakes, filing a being, the mother missing, smiling, barn cat tongue, grassy world, humps lifting. Cats or not giving enough. Boat feel trout differently. How does it feel to cancel plans because of lighting that never comes real? And
light going out in the forehead of the house by the ocean. Into warm black, its feints of diamond fade. Without clothes, without caution, plunging past gravity, wait, where before had been floating nothing, is a gradual body, half remembered, astral with phosphor, yours risen from its tomb in your own mind, haunting nimbleness, glimmerings a random spell has kindled, so that, new-limbed by this weak lamp, the evening's alcohol will feed until the gentle chilling bids you limp, heavily over stones to bed. You wear your master's robe one last time, the far break of waves, their length and sparkle, the spinning globe you wear, and the star running down his cheek.
In July 2005, the lifeless body of a 35-year-old man, Kenneth Pinion, was left at the emergency room of a small rural city about 50 kilometers outside of Seattle, Washington. The doctors pronounced him deceased. The friend who dropped him off fled the scene, and an autopsy had to be performed to determine the cause of death. The doctors concluded that there was an acute peritonitis due to the perforation of the colon. The investigation shed light on the circumstances that led to this perforation. Pinion had been sodomized by a horse. His death was found to be accidental. During a police raid, however, authorities discovered a considerable number of videotapes attesting to the existence of a farm where people paid to have sexual relations with animals. The little community was in panic.
I was dissonant, determination made of dissolved skin. It's silent day, too literal, too many trees, thirsty, repairing my sumac, bloodying my arrangements, have my own ideas of teaching grass, brush, blind, finish, seamed resentment. You copied the door, shapka door. I am just so relaxed, tetanus relaxed, relâché, falling out of time, my fingers all of object, Filipita. No object, no bad day, Mercedes bent, cute date, intense date, hand in my pants, but fingers, hair in Beirut, your office is my toilet. I'm in the self-reflective trenches, meeting someone I want to know, now dust for cough as tables for your mom, in ready powdered, 1 foot is unbearable.
What forecast?
What forecast?
Oh, time. Does it speak? Where? My shoes. Sponges. Will it ring? I tell myself to turn that toe. I turn. Blush. I feel it in the heel. Just do it, they say. The strip against my left shoe. No. If the mud comes, what forecast?
What forecast?
Fighting. Fighting, can I tell? That day at the butcher's, they said, fill them up with my manifestation. No, the nightmare, it hurt to cause only strife. What meat to eat, can I? Oh, but when the wind is soft, all shadows sink beneath my beige, and tucked beneath the zip, I fling sausage, flung, softer only to rearrange for some sense of calm.
The brother spoke to his younger sister. The sun god Utu spoke to Inanna, saying, "Young lady, the flax in its fullness is lovely. Inanna, the grain is glistening in the furrow. I will hoe it for you. I will bring it to you. A piece of linen, big or small, is always needed. Inanna, I will bring it to you. Brother, after you've brought me the flax, who will comb it for me? Sister, I will bring it to you combed. Utu, after you've brought it to me combed, who will spin it for me? Inanna, I will bring it to you spun. Brother, after you've brought the flax to me spun, who will braid it for me? Sister, I will bring it to you braided. Utu, after you've brought it to me braided, who will warp it for me? Inanna, I will bring it to you warped. Brother, after you've brought the flax to me warped, who will weave it for me? Sister, I will bring it to you woven. Utu, after you've brought it to me woven, who will bleach it for me? Inanna, I will bring it to you bleached. Brother, after you've brought my bridal sheet to me, who will go to bed with me? Utu, who will go to bed with me? Sister, your bridegroom will go to bed with you. He who was born from a fertile womb, he who was conceived on the sacred marriage throne, Dumuzi, the shepherd, he will go to bed with you. Inanna spoke, "No, brother, the man of my heart works the hoe, the farmer. He is the man of my heart. He gathers the grain into great heaps. He brings the grain regularly into my storehouses." Utu spoke.
Once I was a sailor in a fiction of the sea, for a made-up self on a boat of text. I was happy as a comma when the waves broke, lifting me like a magic carpet into the changeable mist, then driving me down through the indigo gulf on the slant of ablution's erasure. And what the mist with its long gray hair and crystal kiss, a little template of the fallen sky. Once I was, or could have been, or may yet be, a magnificent sailor.
Një, dy, tre, katër, pesë, gjashtë, shtatë, tetë, nëntë, 10. E imja nuk është. E imja nuk është. Po, të ishte, do a merja me vete. Ta kisha marrë me vete këtu, nuk mund ndalonte. Duhet ta merja deri në shtëpi. Po t'ishte e qarë, do a hiqja. Do më vriste po t'ishe hiqur. Unë nuk e di qa fjallësh them, ma. Them vetëm se kjo nuk është fundi. Dhe gjithë gjuhët e tjera që mund të flas, nuk krahasohen me këto. Një, 2, 3, 4. Një, 2, 3, 4. Dhe kaq.
Okay. Hopefully you're not all too scared, but okay, so yeah, how it will work is like everybody at your table, or if your table is too small, you can start combining tables. You can I guess there are like 4 rows. So basically, you can perform, you can read, you can direct, or you can also just observe and like watch the things unfolding. Does that make sense? Does anyone have any questions? Any questions at all? Also, I'd like, if possible, you guys, I'll let you in on an opportunity to be somewhat famous. It's like, if everybody on the table would like, they can, we would love to screen some of the films tomorrow in the next event. So you can be like, yo, I'm actually, my work is being shown at the poetry project, if you guys would like. And in that case, I would like come around the tables, I'll give you an email, and you guys can send me the footage, and then we'll sort it all out, and you can invite your friends and family and stuff to show that, your poetry project famous. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so maybe we can start.
Sure. I will just quickly add, if you're not comfortable to be famous yet, you don't have to. And if you're fleeing to the night, think about joining us tomorrow. Tomorrow will be my word, and my is everyone. But I do invite you to be part of this experiment. I personally can recommend it, even though you don't have to go as hardcore as we did. And if you need any help in the process, let us know. And you have already heard beautiful, potent voice of Gerard, Ami.
And Ellie, who you saw on
Yes.
screen, will join us tomorrow.
And tomorrow you will hear more from them. You will thank Eddie more once you become famous, but join me to thank Eddie for now, for the for allowing us to be collaborating in this way. Okay, now you may make your film. How do you start?
Okay, wait. Okay, how about let's go group for group, because there's a manageable amount of people here.
And if you want to take your drawing, can they?
If they want to donate, we'll use it for us. Okay.
So you can take your. Yes, if you want to leave if you feel like you want your work to be